I want to bring in CNBC senior analyst and commentator Ron Insana. Peter Baker is New York Times chief White House correspondent and an MSNBC political analyst. Jason Furman is former chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors and a Harvard Kennedy School professor. It's good to have all of you here. So obviously, Jason, that's the guy who had your old job, who said basically nothing to worry about. This is quirks and seasonal stuff. Is that what we're seeing?
In one sense, I sort of agree with him, but in another sense, I think he's betraying, just a profoundly diminished expectation of what the U.S. economy can accomplish. If you look on average this year, the economy has added 85,000 jobs a month. Last year, it added 168,000 jobs a month. So the pace of job growth has halved. If you're content with 85,000 jobs a month, or, I think he said 80 for this month, private sector, that says you're expecting just much less from the U.S. economy than we had before. Some of that slowdown is tariffs. A lot of it is immigration. The dramatic cutbacks on immigration have really slowed the growth of the labor force, slowed job growth, and are slowing economic growth as well.
And Ron, the New York Times put it this way. They say this report shows a deepening cracks in the U.S. economy and, quote, employers continue to create jobs but pulled back on hiring, a sign that more businesses are putting expansion plans on hold as they deal with economic uncertainty. Look, the president, as you know, has been saying all along his goal is to create jobs, to bring back manufacturing, to strengthen the economy. Does this report show, at least for now, his policies are having the opposite effect?
Well, to a certain extent, yeah, Chris, and as Jason was pointing out, I mean, the deportation policies are certainly having an effect on the labor markets. The tariffs, as they are now being imposed and implemented across the board, as of last night, we saw what the tariff rates will be for a wide variety of countries. That has yet to hit corporate America in such a way that we don't know whether they will be raising prices, eating the costs and then laying people off, or dealing with them in some other way that slows economic growth. And so the policies put together, to me, to a certain extent, lesser extent than what we lived through in the 1970s, are reminiscent of some of the policy errors that were made back then that led to an environment. And Jason and I have spoken about this, and Jason's written about this more recently this week, about the possibility of some sort of mini stagflation where growth slows. It's currently at about a 1.2% annual rate, and inflation picks up closer to 3% rather than 2% and leaves the Federal Reserve in a bind, having not cut interest rates this week. It may look silly for not having done so now because the job market looks so weak, but inflation is also picking up. This is a pretty rough spot for the economy to be in at this point in the cycle.
So, Jason, since he brought it up, I'm going to come back to you on what you wrote just yesterday in the Times that tried to explain essentially why the tariff uncertainty hadn't driven the U.S. into a recession. One of the things you wrote was this. Right now, it looks as if all that uncertainty was closer to a momentary panic and background noise than something of lasting consequence. I hope it stays that way, but we will see. Do today's results, today's new tariffs, adjust that at all?
Look, I think you have to be careful with economic data. It really bounces around a lot. So you don't want to think the sky is falling today and then, 2 months from now we get, 110,000 jobs a month and things are looking a little bit better. So there's no doubt in my mind that just our potential growth has shifted down because of what's going on in our labor force. There's no doubt in my mind that you're seeing the effects of the tariffs. You look at jobs in sectors like transportation and warehousing being down. That clearly shows all the signs of the tariffs. But I still don't think there's some reason to expect some type of economic calamity or catastrophe. But if we get a lot fewer jobs and lower incomes and smaller raises and higher prices, that's that in itself is bad, even if it's not a recession.
Well, Peter, let's talk about those higher prices because Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine talked just a couple of hours ago on this network about the tariff situation and what it means for everyday Americans. Take a listen.
raises costs on everyday products, you're going to see a stair step up when you do your back to school shopping, and another step up when you're doing your Thanksgiving shopping, and then another one when you're doing your Christmas shopping. This is a bad situation, and that's why I'm joining with my colleagues as often as I can to try to repeal this tariff madness and hopefully find some Republican colleagues who'll stand up for their constituents instead of caving to Donald Trump.
I'll save maybe the second part of that for anybody who's on Capitol Hill for us, but let me ask you about the real world applications of all this. I mean, so far, it seems as though people have been nervous about this. We've seen the president's poll numbers dropping. The potential of what Tim Kaine says, and I think some people are seeing it already. I know people have said to me, I don't have kids going back to school, but they've said to me, oh, I was in Walmart yesterday, I was in Target yesterday, I couldn't believe what X, Y, or Z, a new backpack cost. What's the White House looking at from this?
Well, the White House isn't seeing numbers that it wants to see. Remember, it was just last year that President Trump said that the Biden economy had gone to hell. Well, this economy that he's presiding over right now is producing half as many new jobs as the Biden economy was in 2024. So this is not the golden age of America that he promised in his inaugural address. He said he would turbocharge the economy, would get out of the sort of solid but not particularly exciting economic growth period and really supercharge, the American economy. We're not seeing that. Obviously, we're seeing the opposite. Now, look, the tariffs haven't yet taken the devastating toll that some people have projected, and the White House takes some comfort from that. They'll go around saying, look, you guys have been wrong all along. So far, the economy's still hanging in there. The markets are still pretty strong. They've gone to record heights. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to go that way. If the markets, in fact, begin to see these tariffs as being real and begin to see prices going up and consumer goods going down, that could really make a difference by the end of the year. I'm not an economist, obviously, but I was struck by a number that came out yesterday showing that consumer spending growth is half today what it was a year ago. And that's really striking because I think that indicates some concern on the part of Americans, consumers. Consumers, of course, drive a lot of economic activity in the United States. So, the White House is nervous. What they're trying to do, of course, is preach patience. The problem is that what they're talking about is a tariff wall, in effect, that's meant to revitalize American manufacturing and American companies. But even if that happens, that won't happen overnight. That's a years-long project. And in the short term, at the very least, even if he's right about the long term, there's going to be some pain that will look bad politically and cause a lot of people to question whether or not Trump really is the economic, genius that he likes to pretend he is.
And Ron, I know you want to get in here. I just want to point out, for example, the tariff on Canadian products that went from 25% to 35%. That could impact what? Lumber, cars, any other things that come from there. Switzerland got hit with a 39% rate. If you need medicines that are manufactured in Switzerland, and there are some very popular ones, what about people's bottom lines?
Well, I think this is a critical question, and the tariffs haven't yet struck the economy, Chris. I think in the way that most people would have anticipated. It's not happening, at a great speed. They're being rolled out over time. Some have been paused. Some have been just recently added. And now when you look at some of these tariffs, like the ones on Brazil, 50%, which also includes Brazilian beef at a time when cattle prices are at an all-time high. This is going to be felt by the consumer over time. And again, there's no reason to expect that these are going to be rolled back anytime soon. The baseline tariffs are 15%. So there are two choices here for American businesses. They can eat these costs. They're the ones who pay the tariff. They're the import taxes, which is a really, I think, better way to describe it. Or they can pass those costs along to the consumers, or some combination of the two. In either case, the tariffs will increase prices over time. And I agree with Jason. Look, this may not be the end of the world. The way I'm looking at this, though, is that this feels more like the start of the 1970s than the end of it, where the policy decisions being made and some of the things that are taking place globally look like an environment that could lead to, and Jason's talked about this and others have as well, some sort of stagflation where growth is slower, prices are higher. It leaves consumers in a pinch, and it also leaves the Federal Reserve in a box as well.